A 0 day in Citrix Netscaler. And Citrix Netscaler is used a lot around the world for working from home. So if that happens, there's a right that we are concerned about that. We had a ThreatTalk the other day about this, and today we're going to go in that particular vulnerability, that particular attack that happened, and all the research we did on that.
Welcome to ThreatTalks. Let's delve deep into the dynamic world of cybersecurity.
I'm joined by Luca Cipriano.
Hi.
He's our threat intel specialist. Welcome. It's a device that you use basically to facilitate IT organizations use to facilitate working from home. So it's the equipment itself that's supposed to be secure, right? That is now vulnerable. So the stuff that is supposed to make you better is breaking down. Obviously, it happens a lot. Citrix Access Gateway is just a example, but let's deep dive into the ramifications of this. Obviously, we've seen lots of ransomware. Well, let's refer to our ThreatTalk about this. We went in depth on that part, but let's now dive into the technical details of it.
Yes.
So, remote code execution. That's the main thing that happened here. What's that?
So, remote code execution, it basically means that somebody can execute code remotely. Really easy, like as it says. In this,
sounds scary, yeah.
In this specific case, that will be an attacker that uses a device to execute code, malicious code, to allow the device to do things that the device shouldn't do, for example. First of all, I would like just to get back one step only and just explain like in short, for who is not familiar with Citrix Netscaler, what it is. So the Citrix Netscaler is one of those devices that lives at the edge of our network, and that can be used for different things. For example, load balancing of traffic, can be used as a web application firewall, can be used as, in this case, for a VPN gateway. So that's your first, the doorstep into your company, in this case. So in this case,
directly connected to the internet.
Yes, indeed. So basically, in this case, there was a remote code execution vulnerability that basically it was using a stack buffer overflow. So for who's not really, I'm trying to explain it in simple words and keep it short, but basically memory, you have like the stack and the heap. The stack is a part of the memory that it is static, and basically it is used, for example, for storing a variable that are known as compile time already, while the heap is more dynamic. So the heap memory is allocated dynamically, and for example, it is used by the application to allocate memory space during runtime. In this case, the flow was in the stack, and basically the stack would the buffer, the stack buffer overflow. It will allow an attacker to basically fill the buffer size. And when the buffer size is filled, then the part of the memory that is next to the one that is allocated could be overflow and therefore overwritten. So then that will might allow an adversary to execute code.
Yeah, so the data that's in the stack, which is quite known beforehand, because it's compile time we already know, so it's predictable what's there. Mm-hmm. An attacker is then able to basically change that. So basically change the working of the device. That's how that then works.
Yes, in simple, yes. Yes. So basically, with this kind of vulnerability, what the attacker was able to do, it was, for example, to upload files on the Citrix Netscaler. Most of the time they uploaded like a zip file that will contain a payload that was composed of like some tools to scan the network, for example, privilege escalation, so they could use it as a stager, and then from there, from the Citrix Netscaler, they were able to navigating some basically folders and basically gain encrypted credentials from the Netscaler and use those credentials to basically crack them and then query the Active Directory and basically start lateral
Very
movement.
quickly, they went into the heart of your network. Basically, that's what
Yes.
they could do because they were like the king of the castle. And the castle.
They had a foothold. They could privilege escalation, and they could start to do reconnaissance, and then, of course, lateral movement from that point.
And it was a 0 day.
Yes.
And that happened a lot, unfortunately.
Yes, indeed. That's unfortunate. So, basically, once the attacker is on your network and has a foot in it, then after doing lateral movement, what they can do, for example, they can start to use the Netscaler as a stager to exfiltrate data. So just move basically data there, encrypt the data, and then just via the command and control server, just retrieve the data that they stole from your network. But these open doors, for example, also to deploy a ransomware. It depends on how deep they can go.
It's a can of worms that's opened once this happens. And we've actually seen this with customers that had advice like that and that called us, our CISO services, hey, listen, we think we're hacked, help us, or we got a notification of someone that we were hacked. Can you tell us a little bit about how that went?
Of course. Indeed, like a lot of companies were affected by this. The Mandiant, which is a security company, they released they did a really good job releasing a script that would help detecting for IOCs on the Netscaler to see if there was any indicator of compromise that your Netscaler was victim.
Talking about IOCs in this sense, in this case, it's like the stuff that they typically install on the boxes, like
it's
zip file, for example.
It's the traces that they leave behind them. Because of course, like you can't leave no traces as an attacker. It does not matter how good you are. I mean, even if you use a tool to delete all your traces, for example, then you still need to delete the tool. So, and how do you delete the tool?
And that is also trace,
That's a trace in itself.
Guard
so
of the guard of the guard of the guard. Probably.
Yeah, it's really difficult for an attacker to completely leave 0 traces behind. So basically, what they did, they found for some IOCs, indicator of compromise, that would point to this attack. So we, as soon as we knew it was publicly available, we basically gave the script to our customers because, of course, we don't manage their Netscaler devices, and they ran the script themselves, and some customer returned positive. So we actually analyzed the image of their Netscaler to try to help help them with recovery if it was needed. And actually, the fun, it's not really fun, but the fun thing is
I'm sure you think it's fun.
Yeah. Now the fun
secretly I do too. So.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting, but the fun thing is that, for example, for one of the customers, the IOCs that was found, it was not about this CVE, but it was about an older CVE that was from years ago that has been exploited, and basically successfully they had access to the Netscaler years ago already, and we could see that the communication with the command and control server was interrupted when we onboarded them, and basically we closed with the firewall the connection. They couldn't reach it anymore.
Okay.
So
so we could see the traces.
We could see the traces that were still there. There was like some files in the staging directory where there were like credentials stored, and there was like a PHP reverse shell that they used to communicate, and also a file with all the usernames and password of all the VPN people that probably they will. There was like a cron job, so a scheduled task to retrieve it. That was quite interesting, actually. Of course, it was not used anymore, looking at the timestamp for a few years.
But it shows you how vulnerable we can be without you knowing. I mean, they were there for years, and and of course you can change your network, so it's better then. That's what we did then, but still. Then
you have not a lot of visibility on those devices that are at the edge of the network, right? Because like it's not that you're gonna install your EDR on a Netscaler, like you know.
That sounds like from a technical perspective, like a bad idea.
Yeah, indeed. But therefore, you have this kind of issues can happen.
Yeah. So if this happens to you, would you say shut down? So suppose this 0 day was a couple of months ago, actually. There's many customers still, organizations that still are not patched correctly, so it's still going on. But it may happen again. I mean, it's also not the first time with this particular item. We're probably going to talk about different equipment in later deep dives as well. So it's kind of happens from time to time. So if there is a 0 day like this, I mean, 0 days simply means that you don't know what's going to happen. Should you shut down your machine, you think?
Well, it depends. Like a lot of questions asked in this realm, the answer is always it depends. Like how critical is your infrastructure behind that? Can you afford to shut it down? And
what's the associated risk if you don't?
Yeah, exactly. So there is not an
That's because 0 day means there's also no solution. No solution. You cannot patch the vulnerability itself, right? You cannot. There's no known fix for it.
Yeah,
so
at the moment
the case, because in this case, how long did it take? Because so it was announced, it was a 0 day. Nobody knew how to fix it. How long did it take before we could actually fix it?
If actually I remember correctly, when they released it, they released the patch already. But the problem then is the time it was. It takes time for companies to basically fix the hole, because of course it can cause a downtime. Sometimes if you have critical infrastructure and you patch something, you don't know what's going to happen. Like a patch can break something. You don't know that, so it's kind of risky. Do you have a rollback? Can you roll back easily? How much can you afford?
You can practice this. I mean, that's what we actually encourage our customers to keep up to date. And first of all, to get protection for the latest vulnerabilities that are now patched, but also to do it regularly, even if it's a minor thing, to still do it because you'll get used to it. Huh?
Yeah.
And then and it's not a big issue it's probably an issue to shut down remote work for an hour, especially post COVID.
Yes.
But the alternative is much worse. I mean, I remember. There was because of the law in our country, we had a traffic jam day.
Oh yeah.
because of this thing, because the government decided to shut them all off for the day,
so
everybody had to
go to work. Yeah, so it creates real life issues as well. But again, I think when we had a ThreatTalk about the DDoS, we kind of touched this as well. But the important thing is that you need to invest in preventive measures, like for example, a good network design, a good zero trust approach, everything that can, because it is.
Yeah. So in the show notes, we actually have listed all the mitigations that are applicable to this particular CVE.
Yeah, we have a good infographic that we made.
Yeah, and a couple of those mitigations are indeed segmentation. It's privileged account management and update patch management, basically.
Yeah.
So indeed, network segmentation. Why would that help then?
Yeah, would a limit, for example,
for this particular customer that you mentioned, it actually worked. Huh? I mean,
yeah, of course. I mean, I think it's really important because it can limit lateral movement.
Explain lateral movement, please.
Lateral movement. So it means that from one device, I can affect another device and just in simple thing, just bounce on the other device and then just move laterally in your network. So basically, gaining access to more devices in your network.
And so the first device is the most difficult one, and then if you have like a trust model that allows everything,
if
you can hop from one system to the other. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, it reminds me of this big target attack that we in 2016 or so, where they came in insignificant system for the climate control, and then they could lateral move to the database server, to the point of sale systems, and
why
take
would you take
the reverse way back to exfiltrate all data?
Why would you allow that traffic? Is it needed? You should really take a good look at your network, because it's most likely you don't need.
If we would ask a CISO and say, hey, listen, we have a proposal. We would like to add a firewall rule within our organization. Every system within our own organization can talk to every system in our own organization. From the LAN to LAN. You would never do that.
We'll have a heart attack probably.
Yes, but we do. I mean, we have this thing of implicit trust. That's everywhere, and that's why zero trust segmentation is a big part of it. Is so overly important.
The problem also is it creates extra work. I've been working on those allow any rule that then when you need to clean them up, it's not so easy. It takes time because now it's allowing everything, but you need to find out what was the traffic that was supposed to be allowed.
Is it supposed to be allowed? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so then you need to start to narrow it down and cleaning up a week at a time to see if you're blocking something vital that it's needed.
So basically what you're saying, this mitigation is to make the blast ratio smaller. right? I mean, if suppose they are in, and we gotta assume that at some point that happens, then at least make sure that they don't immediately have to.
I think you should always assume that is going to happen, because, like, of course, one of the threats is an insider threat. Maybe you have an employee that is really mad at the boss, and then it sells the access to a malicious actor. Those are things that can happen, and that's like, you don't need a 0 day. It's not something. It's just something that's, well, the guy gave the credentials to get in. But these things happen.
So we need to religiously patch it every time, make it a habit.
Especially if it's at the edge. If you can't patch it, then you should really think about it.
One thing, 0 days is a bit difficult, because then we don't have a patch yet. Then we need to more structurally change our way of working with segmentation. And the other mitigation we talked about is the privileged account management. So why does that play a role here?
I think it's really important. Well, I think it is really important that users are allowed only to perform the tasks that they need to perform. So just give high privilege access only to, like, users that they really need to have high privilege access, and then try to restrict as much as possible. That will limit also lateral movement. For example, in this case, when you start to query the domain controller and you get, for example, or you manage to get some credential from another user, if that user is the permissions are narrow, then the attacker can do less and needs to.
It's like segmentation, but more on a logical level, not necessarily.
Also, having a good overview of your network will help, because you need to know which hosts, which users, like all this kind of things.
Again, there's lots of things that we can do.
Yeah.
It requires some effort
Yes.
And knowledge, unfortunately. Yeah.
Indeed.
All right. Is there anything you'd like to add to what we've talked about? Anything for example, good sources to read more about this?
Yeah, I do believe that, if I remember correctly, well, I do remember correctly because I read it really well. But about this specific threat, there's a really good CISA article where it really shows you step by step the whole attack pattern, and there's really good investigations. It helped us a lot as well. I follow it, especially when we were helping our customers with this. So you know already which indicator of compromise look for, and what are the next steps that the attacker did. So that was extremely useful resource.
Okay, great. Yeah, we'll share our resource, as we said a couple of times, in our show notes. Luca, thank you very much for all the insights you gave today about Citrix Netscaler. Let's go patch, let's go microsegment our network, and let's go set proper credentials everywhere and access management roles and stuff. Listeners, thank you very much for listening into this Threat Talk, this special about the Citrix Netscaler Zero Day. If you liked it, please like this video, like this podcast, and press the subscribe button as well, so you'll be sure to miss none of these. We have regular Threat Talks that are that handle about 3 different vulnerabilities that we see happening in the wild on a certain subject, and then we do a deep dive like this on some of those to give some more background and some more technical detail about that. Go to threat-talks.com for all this information. There's data sheets, links to other sources. So if you are, for example, preparing a talk or a presentation to show in your internal organization, this is a great place to start, and we love your feedback. So please leave your comments below. We'll respond to them, and you can also email us at team@threat-talks.com. So from the security operations floor here at Ontoit, I thank you very much, and I hope to see you next time.
Thank you for listening to Threat Talks, a podcast by Ontoit Cybersecurity and M6. Did you like what you heard? Do you want to learn more? Follow Threat Talks to stay up to date on the topic of cybersecurity.